Watkins, Minnesota, a small town in the heart of the Midwest. Life here moved slowly, the kind of place where everyone knew each other's cars, and kids grew up thinking the world outside their yard was safe. Danger wasn't something people worried about. It felt far away, something that happened somewhere else. Late summer had come quietly. The night air was warm, windows were open, and houses went dark one by one as families drifted off to sleep. No one imagined that by morning, everything would be different. Before dawn, that sense of safety disappeared. A 5-year-old girl went missing, not from some dark alley or a stranger's van, but from her own home, from the room where she had fallen asleep thinking she was safe, where fear wasn't supposed to exist. When the morning came, it brought a shock that washed over the town. Silence quickly turned into panic. Familiar routines gave way to fear, and slowly, the question spread, how does something like this even happen here? This isn't just a story about a crime. It's a story about trust, and the cost when that trust is broken. This is the story of Elena Jean Ertl. Before her name appeared in headlines, before it became tied to a case file or a courtroom, Elena Jean Ertl was just a little girl, 5 years old, full of energy, curiosity, and trust. She was born on October 31, 2010, a Halloween baby. From the start, she brought joy to everyone around her. Family described her as affectionate, playful, and endlessly expressive, the kind of child who laughed easily and loved openly. Elena loved animals. She loved music. She loved singing, even when she didn't know all the words. She loved cartoons, dressing up, and especially princesses. Elsa from Frozen was a favorite. Her pink blanket went everywhere with her, a little piece of comfort she held on to every night. She had just finished preschool, and her world was still small and simple. It was shaped by routine, imagination, and the people she trusted most. Mornings meant waking up at home. Nights meant being tucked in by her parents. There was no sense of danger in her life. No idea that the world could ever be cruel. To her parents, Elena was everything. She was the center of their days, the reason routines existed, the reason weekends were planned. They watched her grow, watched her personality blossom, unaware of how little time they would actually have together. To the people of Watkins, Elena was familiar. She wasn't a stranger. She was the little girl at community events, at parks, around town, a part of the town itself. And that's what makes what happened next so hard to grasp. August 19, 2016 started like any other summer Friday in Watkins. That evening, Elena's father was at a local softball game. The field lights glowed as teammates laughed and talked, the hum of summer insects in the background. Among them was a man everyone thought they knew. Familiar, trusted, the kind of person no one would suspect. After the game, a small group lingered, chatting and unwinding after the week. Eventually, the night moved indoors, and one of those paths would lead back to the Ertl family home. Inside, everything seemed normal. Elena had spent the day like any 5-year-old, playing, laughing, moving through a world that felt safe and predictable. By the early hours, exhaustion finally caught up with her. Around 2 a.m., her mother carried her to bed. She was already asleep, her blanket tucked around her, a kiss on her forehead. The door closed softly behind her. Downstairs, the adults remained awake. Elena's father and his friend talked quietly as the night stretched on. Somewhere in those hours, everything changed. Trust was broken in the worst possible way. A line that should never be crossed was crossed, inside a home that believed itself safe. While the rest of the house slept, Elena was taken from her bed. By 8 a.m., when Elena's parents woke up, they found something that would instantly shatter any sense of a normal day. Elena, who had been tucked into bed just hours before, was gone. But that wasn't all. Also missing was the family's white 2002 GMC Sierra pickup, the truck her father relied on for work and daily life. And most alarming of all, the man who had spent the night in their home, Zachary Todd Anderson, a co-worker and longtime family friend of Elena's father, was gone too. Panic set in immediately. Elena's parents called the Meeker County Sheriff's Office. Deputies quickly began searching the area, canvassing yards, streets, and nearby woods, hoping against hope that a frightened child might be found close to home. It quickly became clear this wasn't a simple missing child case. Elena had vanished under circumstances that suggested abduction. At 1:12 p.m., an Amber Alert was issued across Minnesota, sharing her name, description, and details with the entire state. The alert set off a massive response. State and local law enforcement, trackers, and volunteers all mobilized, searching for any trace of her. Investigators focused on the most obvious lead, the stolen truck. Cell phone tracking left in the Sierra showed that the vehicle had traveled north into Todd County before the phone was turned off later that morning. Every minute that passed added to the fear and uncertainty. Back in Watkins, neighbors, friends, and even strangers gathered. Some formed search parties along roads and trails. Others stood quietly, praying, hoping for any sign that Elena would be found. As the afternoon went on, the urgency only grew. Search teams spread out across county lines. Helicopters hovered overhead, scanning roads, fields, and tree lines. Then there was a break. Around 2 p.m., Cass County Dispatch received a call from someone claiming to know the location of the stolen truck, and possibly the missing child. The caller identified himself as the father of Zachary Todd Anderson, the man who had spent the night at the Ertl home. He said his son had earlier asked permission to go to the family's cabin in the woods near Motley, Minnesota. The lead sent the investigation hundreds of miles north. Law enforcement, including Cass County deputies, responded to the remote property. In a shallow ravine near the cabin, they found the stolen pickup, abandoned as if someone had tried to hide it. The cabin itself was quiet. Inside, officers found a shotgun on the kitchen table, with ammunition scattered nearby. On the same table lay a piece of paper that appeared to be a suicide note, stained in a way that immediately alarmed the detectives. No one was inside the cabin. Then, around 4:24 p.m., K-9 units and officers moving through the woods spotted a figure in a swampy area just beyond the trees. It was Anderson. He was unarmed and did not resist. When asked about Elena, he gave a chillingly confused response. "What girl?" Officers, now certain of his location, moved carefully into the dense, swampy woods. K-9 units led the way, noses to the ground, searching for any trace of Elena. The terrain was treacherous. Thick mud, water, and debris slowed every step. Every second felt heavy with the knowledge that a life was still at risk. Then, amidst the trees and murky water, something familiar appeared. Her blanket. Pink, small, unmistakable. The same blanket Elena had gone to bed with hours before. Partially submerged and tangled in reeds, it brought a sudden, silent pause to the search team. The innocence it represented was almost unbearable against what they now suspected. Minutes later, officers found Elena's body, hidden beneath water and debris. The discovery confirmed the worst fears. She had been killed. Medical examiners later determined that Elena died from homicidal violence, including strangulation, blunt force trauma, and sexual assault. She was just 5 years old. The case immediately shifted from a desperate search for a missing child to a criminal investigation of murder and sexual assault. Anderson was taken into custody on the spot. He made no attempt to flee and offered little explanation. Investigators began reconstructing his movements, each detail revealing more of the calculated, horrifying choices he had made. For Elena's family, the moment was devastating. Friends, neighbors, and an entire town had been holding their breath, hoping for a miracle. The reality was far worse. But even in grief, the discovery allowed law enforcement to begin building a case that would eventually lead to justice. With Elena's body recovered, the focus turned entirely to Zachary Todd Anderson, the man last seen with her and believed responsible. Law enforcement knew time was critical, both to build a strong case and to ensure the community was safe. Investigators meticulously documented everything in Cass County. Every detail mattered. The swamp where her body was found, the placement of her blanket, the condition of the terrain, and evidence inside the cabin. Items from Elena's home, the stolen pickup, and Anderson's personal effects were carefully collected. Forensic experts worked to piece together the timeline, using cell phone records, GPS data, and eyewitness accounts to reconstruct the sequence of events. It became clear that Anderson had planned and carried out the abduction in a way that initially hid his involvement. Anderson was questioned extensively. At first, he gave little information. Investigators carefully compared his statements with physical evidence, phone records, and vehicle tracking. Slowly, the picture came together. He had taken Elena from her home, driven her in the family truck to the cabin in Cass County, and committed the acts that led to her death. On August 23, 2016, Anderson was formally arrested and charged with first-degree murder, kidnapping, criminal sexual conduct in the first degree, possession of a firearm by a prohibited person, theft of a motor vehicle. The charges reflected the severity of his actions and the multiple crimes committed during the abduction. Authorities emphasized the thoroughness of the investigation. Every lead was followed, every piece of evidence verified. Witnesses were interviewed multiple times. Surveillance footage and digital records confirmed Anderson's movements. The combination of physical evidence, digital tracking, and his own statements left little doubt about his guilt. For Elena's family, the arrest was both relief and heartbreak. Relief, because the person responsible was in custody. Heartbreak, because the details of what had happened to her were unbearable. The community rallied around them as law enforcement prepared the case for prosecution, ensuring the evidence was airtight. Anderson eventually pleaded guilty to the most serious charges, admitting responsibility for Elena's death. In March 2018, he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, Minnesota's harshest punishment. The sentence reflected the severity of the crime and ensured he could never harm another child. But for the Ertl family and for the community, the legal conclusion could not erase the pain. In the years that followed, Elena's family worked to honor her memory. They spoke about her love of life, her joy, and her innocence, focusing on the vibrant, precious child she had been, rather than the horrors of her death. The community of Watkins also sought to preserve her memory. A memorial statue was erected in McCarthy Park, a place where children play and families gather. It depicts Elena as she was, small, smiling, surrounded by flowers. Visitors often leave flowers, balloons, or small toys at the base, a quiet act of remembrance and love. Through the pain, Elena's life, her laughter, her curiosity, and her spirit continues to be remembered, a lasting legacy in the town she called home. Thanks for watching. If you're interested in real investigations, shocking cases, and justice served, please subscribe, leave a comment, and join us as we explore more true crime stories.